Welcome, everybody, back to another episode of the Amateur Experts Podcast, where we are experts on absolutely nothing. It's your host, Landon Oliver, and co-host Andrew Scott. What's going on, dude?
How's it going, man?
Going pretty well. Got the finals game on here. Suns in 4. So that's the thing right now, isn't it?
Yeah.
But yeah, it's looking pretty good, although Giannis just made a 3. So if that starts happening...
That's not good. But yeah, if you're not saying Suns and 4, old dude from the internet might come and grab you by your chain and beat the mess out of you. So yeah, I mean, I'm rooting for the Suns, so I hope it works out that way. And hey, I mean, shout out to you in our NBA show. You had one half of your finals prediction correct. I had the Clippers and Nets, and you had the Suns and Nets. So you had half of it right on here at least. So
to be fair,
one of us was half an expert.
Didn't happen. I would have had both of them correct.
Oh yeah, definitely, yeah.
I can't predict injuries.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, I was been big on the Suns for a little while. I think Chris Paul's due finally, so I'm hoping they win. Giannis still has a lot of years left.
Yeah, he's got plenty of time to get him one.
So I would like to see Chris Paul, plus my boy Book,
Yeah, of course, man. D-Book. Yeah, that is the future Finals MVP on the way, hopefully.
Yeah. I just like the way they play. I just like watching the Suns play basketball. It's
right.
They've got a very throwback kind of a squad. So
yeah, I'm excited, man, to kind of put a bow on this.
Chris Paul might be hurt.
I'm kind of excited to.
He might be okay. He landed on his leg. But enough about basketball. We know why you guys are here. It's fantasy football time. Again, part 3 of our off-season preview, where we did our busts, we did our plant your flags. Well, today we're doing sleepers. And the format is, of course, it's a 0.5 PPR, not full PPR. Not that I don't think it would change that much regardless, but and this isn't dynasty format. This is just for redraft leagues. But some of these guys, we also could be very high on in dynasty as well. But we're just talking about for this next season, just 0.5 PPR leagues. And these are very deep sleepers for some of us. Some of these guys are not even on the ADP that we're looking at.
Yeah, I'm not going to be able to scroll down and find some of these guys.
Yeah. So, I mean, a lot of these guys you might even be able to find undrafted in some of your leagues. But really excited to talk about some sleeper candidates today. We have one quarterback, for each of us. So, I mean, that would technically be 2. But we have one quarterback, one running back, one wide receiver, and one tight end that we are going to give you that each of us thinks are going to outperform where they're being drafted, which is generally, when you're talking about sleepers, you're talking about 8th round or later on a lot of these guys. So, yeah, I'm going to go ahead, kick it off.
You want to hop right into it?
Yeah, we'll hop right into it, man. So my quarterback that
we're starting
with running back. So my running back sleeper of the year is none other than Bills running back Zack Moss. And I know everybody's sitting there thinking, Zack Moss, what happened to Devin Singletary? Well, technically Devin Singletary's still there, but supposedly after last season, they wanted to give him the workload. It didn't work out. He's fallen out of favor with the coaching staff. And from everything that's been said in training camp, Zack Moss is going to be the starting running back for that team. And if you look at where things are headed, if it's anything like last year, that's a top 5 type of offense. I mean, a lot of weapons, Josh Allen, just, fantastic. And of course he could vulture away some of those goal line touchdowns. But at the same time, if you're able to get a starting running back for a high powered offense that's going to produce plenty of scoring opportunities for them. And let's see where he's being drafted right now. I believe it is
right here at the top of the page.
Yeah. So it looks like the bottom of the 8th round.
Mm-hmm.
There's not too many running backs starting for top 5 to 10 offenses that are going to be available in the 8th round. And I think Zack Moss, another year from him. He was a rookie last season. He was injured all year. Didn't really get a fair shake because I thought he was a fantastic running back coming out of Utah. I actually drafted him in our dynasty league. Actually made a deal to get DK Metcalf that included Zack Moss. So he's no longer in my team, but I was really high on him. I drafted him last year because I think the talent is there. And I think this is just going to be a fresh start. He's going to have a bigger workload. Like I said, they tried the Singletary experiment the last couple seasons. It's not worked out. They want to move on from him. And I think kind of all the opportunity is going to be there for a talented running back in a high-powered offense that should get the bulk of the carries to be there late in the 8th, possibly 9th round. And that's just why he's one of my sleepers. I just think if you look at some of the running backs that are going around this area, you have Phillip Lindsay, who's in that huge timeshare down in Houston. Gus Edwards, who's splitting time, which I think Drew's going to talk about.
Well, we'll talk about him very shortly.
But Tony Pollard backup, J.D. McKissick backup. You're drafting him in an area where you're hoping a lot of guys are either going to get hurt or or the starter gets hurt and they're going to step into that starting role, or somebody just takes hold of that backfield. And so I think with everything coming out of training camp, I think his ADP is actually going to shoot up here pretty soon because there's been a lot of speculation due to what was been going on with the Bills offseason and their training camp, where he was taking majority of the first team reps. I think his ADP is going to shoot up relatively quick here, but I really don't see it getting higher than the 6th round. I think that's max is where you might see him go is in the 6th. And even that's a little too high for me. But I think he's a very, very solid RB2, RB3 type candidate for your team. I don't think you're going to get, RB1 production out of him. You might some weeks. It'll be very touchdown dependent. But
right.
I think anytime you're getting a solid mid-tier RB2 in almost, back of the 8th, 9th, more likely the 9th round, I think that's great value there. And that's why I have him as one of my sleepers. And if everything goes perfect, and he does take control of that, that backfield and shows off the talent that he showed there in Utah. Like I said, outside of, Singletary, which, like I said, I don't see them using him as much as they did last year. And then Josh Allen, of course, vulturing some of the red zone touchdowns with his legs. This could be a very high-end RB2 that you're getting. And he could honestly produce some RB1 type weeks for you as well, some scattered throughout there in the season, if things go perfectly. But yeah, anytime you can get somebody like that back of the 8th, 9th round, more than likely, I'm all over that.
Yeah, I think the biggest risk with Zack Moss is what you've highlighted, the fact that Josh Allen is such a vulture around that goal line, but that risk is baked into his ADP right now with where he's going. So you don't really have to worry too much about that. Like, you're not having to draft him to be your RB1 and your RB2. I do think he's a better pass blocker than Devin Singletary. So I think that'll have him on the field a little bit more than Singletary. My issue, man, is I'm just really not crazy about either one of the guys. Like, I think that the Bills would like to, just completely take a refresh at this position. But the reality is that's not going to happen before the season starts, and somebody has to take snaps at the position. And these guys are going back to back in terms of running backs. Their Zack Moss goes off at the 809 right now, and then the next running back off the board is Singletary at the 903. So you kind of have your chance to shoot your shot on who you think is going to be the starter if you want to take a guy in this range. And it's not, if you can end up with the running back for a top 5 NFL offense, that's not a bad thing to have on your fantasy roster, especially whenever you're getting it close to the double-digit rounds. So, you have to shoot your shot for sure with these guys going back to back. And me personally, the way that I would be approaching this if I was drafting is I would be fading both of these guys and grabbing a guy that's going 2 spots later, which is Mr.
The only thing I will say before you get into yours is this might be me buying the offseason hype a little bit, because there's some beat reporters that have talked to some of the coaching staff,
Right.
And they're projecting a 60 to 70% timeshare for Zack Moss in that offense. And to me, that's, anytime you're
That'll
getting,
be
like I
great
said,
value if that ends up coming to
exactly.
fruition.
So, I mean, depending on that, if he does have that much of a workload, like you said, in a high scoring offense, the production, the production is going to come. So that's the last thing I'll say. And I'll let you get into your guy, who I'm also a massive fan of, considering I also have him on my dynasty team.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a really good thing for you this year, more so than it has been to this point in his career. This is kind of, so like I said, my strategy whenever I'm in a redraft, if I'm in a mock draft or anything like that, and I'm in this range here where you're looking at Zack Moss and Singletary, I'm just skipping down a couple spots and I'm grabbing Gus the Bus. And here's why. So right now he's the running back 41 off the board. So you're not investing a lot. Whenever you're grabbing this guy and throwing him on your bench, you're talking about like a running back 5, possibly whenever you're in redraft, running back 4, that type of thing, depending on how early.
Top 30 guy.
Right. So the Ravens had 393 running back carries in I think it was 2020, 2019. And Mark Ingram accounted for 51% of those, who is no longer on the team. So it's, J.K. Dobbins is the highly drafted year 2 player coming in, and he, you expect him to get some more work. Like, you're not drafting Gus Edwards as the Baltimore Ravens RB1. He is going to be the RB2 on the team, but you're drafting the RB2 on a team that is going to be the heavy favorite to lead the league in rushing attempts. Again, yeah, exactly. They just signed this guy to just this offseason to a 2-year, $10 million contract. They had a chance to let him walk and turn Dobbins into a true, just complete workhorse, where you're talking about Dobbins. If that would happen, Dobbins is probably, in the top 5 in ADP. But that didn't happen because Gus the Bus is a really, really good running back. He has 5.2 yards per carry the last 2 seasons, which is 5th among running backs. And he's gained some type of yardage on almost 90% of his 400 plus carries, which is the highest percentage of any running back in the NFL since he was drafted, or since he was entered the league in 2018. So the guy is just flat out good at football. He's a good running back in an offense that runs the ball more than anyone in the league. There's plenty of factors there where Lamar is also going to be running the ball. Lamar is a risk of taking carries to the goal line, similar to Josh Allen. And then you've got the J.K. Dobbins factor as well. But he's a running back that you're drafting in the 9th round as your running back 4, most likely. And he's got standalone value even as a backup. Like, if you're in a pinch and you need to start him, you can start him, because with it just being him and Dobbins there in the backfield, he's going to get enough carries to at least not kill you. And then there's going to be weeks where the touchdowns go his way, and and he's going to end up possibly, winning that week for you. And then not even to mention, you don't ever want to wish injury on anybody, or, bank on injury, because predicting injuries is dumb, and something that we're not going to be in the business of doing. But if Dobbins was to get hurt, now you have a league winning type of guy on your roster as well, who already had standalone value. So it's not like he's sitting on the bench with no hope, unless somebody gets hurt. Like, you're able to play him if you need to. And then if that was to unfortunately happen to Dobbins, now you've got a league winner. So in the 9th round, running back 41 off the board, he's somebody that I'm taking over several running backs going ahead of him, including both Buffalo running backs. And someone that I think is going to easily outperform his ADP of the 9th round at running back 41.
Yeah, obviously, I could go on and on about Gus Edwards, just because I'm such a big believer in his talent, which is why I drafted him.
And the Ravens are too. That's the big thing for me, is they chose to pay him whenever they could let him walk.
Yeah, I was very selfish, and I wanted to see him get a starting running back gig this offseason, just because I do think, as a starting I'm very, very high on Gus Edwards as a runner. I wanted to have him dominate a backfield, but we'll wait another year. But like you said, if something does happen to the Dobbins, and you don't ever wish anything, but if it does happen, yeah, you are definitely looking at a locked and loaded RB1 type of player
Mm-hmm.
on a weekly basis.
Absolutely.
So, which position we hitting next?
Next is going to be the wide receiver spot.
Wide receivers. All right. So my wide receiver sleeper of the year by default is going to be Tyrell Williams, ex Los Angeles Charger, ex Oakland Raider. Obviously had the injury last season, out for the year. Left the Raiders, got picked up by the Detroit Lions this year, and basically the whole reason why he's a sleeper is, one, you can probably get him undrafted.
Look, let me flip over real quick. Let me find Tyrell Williams. Hang on. Oh no. All right. No, the Chargers and the Broncos defense are getting drafted before Tyrell Williams. He's not on the list. He's not here.
Yeah, and if you look at the Detroit receiving core, you got the Amon-Ra St. Brown,
Rookie. Yeah.
Then you've got Quintez Cephas going into his second year, and then you have Tyrell Williams, and those are the top three wide receivers for that team. Now, I mean, technically, I guess you could include T.J. Hawkinson in that, but he's a tight end, and we're just talking receivers here. And clearly, I don't know, if this is your first year playing fantasy football, this could be your second year. You might not really know about Tyrell Williams. Whenever he was with Los Angeles, with the Chargers, Tyrell Williams was a fantastic player, great deep threat, great red zone threat, super big guy. And basically it boils down to, you're getting a guy that could possibly be the wide receiver one on a starting NFL team, and he's going undrafted. And to me, that's just crazy. So I've always liked Tyrell Williams as a player. Obviously, you're baking in the injury and all that. But yeah. That basically, he's just, like I said, not to mention, whenever Anthony Lynn was his offensive coordinator or was his head coach there, he was a huge deep threat on that roster. Jared Goff's there. Say what you want about Jared Goff. He actually is, by the metrics, a very accurate deep thrower. He doesn't throw a lot of deep passes. That's not his forte. But when he does throw them, he's generally accurate. So the offensive line there's elite. Play action. They're going to run the ball a lot with Swift. It sets up for just, 2 or 3. You might have 2 or 3 weeks a year where Tyrell Williams can catch, 2 touchdowns, a game, and you're looking at wide receiver one production. And if things do end up falling the way that I think they do with that depth chart, like I said, you have a wide receiver one on an NFL roster who's going to get the majority of the targets at that position that you're getting undrafted.
Right. Yeah. That's the big thing with this pick is you literally can use your very last pick in your draft to grab him. Like, if you're saving defense and kicker for your last couple of picks, your last positional player pick, you can use to take a flyer on this guy. He's not going drafted according to the ultimate draft kit from the fantasy footballers. Right now he's going in the 20th round, and most like standard 12-team redraft leagues don't have a 20th round. So the guy truly is, going undrafted. And so it's like, it's hard. Like, what's the point of even arguing against this pick?
Yeah. So the last full season that he played, he was 100% healthy in 0.5 PPR leagues. Do you know where he ranked? Wide receiver 18.
Wow.
Yeah.
I knew it was good, but I didn't know it was that good.
The last full season he was healthy. Wide receiver 18 for the San Diego.
Was that Phillip Rivers?
Yep. It was Phillip Rivers. And even after that, in Oakland, he had obviously, he missed the games, but so he caught 7 touchdowns that year that he was wide receiver 18 on the season. Then in the other years, he's caught 4 touchdowns, 5 touchdowns, 6 touchdowns while barely playing the season. Like I said, he was out all last year.
So he can find the end zone.
Yeah, very good at finding the end zone. Very capable deep threat. Still only 29 years old. 6'4", 205-pound, huge red zone guy for Jared Goff to rely on, especially because in that receiving game in the red zone, the whole focus is going to be on Hawkinson in that red zone.
Right.
So, he should see plenty of one-on-one coverage. And like I said, with the way the depth chart lines up, he should lead that team in wide receiver targets, and you're getting him undrafted. So,
yeah,
Williams, my sleep at the wide receiver position for the season.
Yeah, and the best thing about this pick is you
don't have to spend your money.
Right. And what I like about guys that you're taking at the end of your draft, those are usually going to be guys you're dropping for whoever you want to grab off waivers after week 1. And so you want the way that I approach, and I learned this from the fantasy footballers as well. I thought this was a great strategy to pick up. The way that I approach my last positional player in the draft is I want to find somebody that week 1, I'm going to see if I've got something or not. Because if not, I want to be able to cut bait with that player to grab whoever has caught my attention the most in the waiver wire after week 1. And so, with Tyrell Williams, like TJ Hawkinson is going to be involved. DeAndre Swift is going to be involved in the passing game in terms of those are the certainties for the Lions going into the season.
And neither one of those guys is a wide receiver.
Right, exactly. And then beyond that, you don't know how involved Amon-Ra St. Brown, the rookie, is going to be, or if Tyrell Williams, the guy that they're drawing up plays for, whatever the case may be. But week 1, you're going to be able to watch the Lions game, see what the game plan looks like, see what the target distribution looks like, and see if you might have something there. It's not something where you're going to have to wait and see. It's like the guy's going undrafted. So me wasting energy trying to argue against this and talk about my hatred of Jared Goff or what there's no point. Like this is truly, a sleeper, a sleeper at its definition. So yeah, no, I like the pick. Nothing that, there's really
somebody's
nothing to say
against football there.
Yeah.
Jared Goff isn't going to throw 0 touchdowns.
No, and that's another thing too, is the Lions are probably going to be behind in a lot of games.
Yep.
And as much as I'm going blank with there, as much as Dan Campbell is going to want to, break people's kneecaps and run the ball 50 times a game, they're probably not going to have the luxury of doing that if they're going to want to compete. They're going to have to throw the ball because they're going to be down. Yeah. So,
and that's a DeAndre Swift plug as well.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, that dude is about to. There's a legit shot that guy leads. Yeah, there's a legit shot that guy leads the running back position in terms of targets. Like, it wouldn't surprise me a bit.
You saw how they used Austin Eckler there with Anthony Lynn. So that's where I'm projecting DeAndre Swift. I'm not projecting him to be as good as Austin. I think he's more talented than Eckler for sure. And I don't really want to get into DeAndre Swift real quick, but yeah, I'm really high on him because they are going to be trailing in a lot of games, and that's a really good offensive line as well there in
Detroit. Right. So yeah, I mean, you shoot. If you're sitting there scrambling, you got a few seconds, like you're down to your last few seconds on the clock with your last pick, and you don't know who to pick, just scroll down and grab Tyrell Williams, and see what happens week 1. I don't hate that at all.
And then whenever the ultimate look, I gotta tell a story. It's one of the funniest stories that I've done. So we have just a few of us buddies and like parents and stuff. We have a league that we play in. Well, Jared.
Yeah.
His dad, massive Cowboys fan, plays fantasy football with us every year. Well, I don't think he has the last couple of years, but this was, I guess, 2014, 2015. And all off season, he's been talking about Kevin Ogletree.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I already know where this is
going. Ogletree all season. And we're just like, who the fuck is Kevin Ogletree? Well, we get into the draft. This dude in like the 6th round, like drafts Kevin Ogletree. Like, and we're all just laughing. We're making fun of it. We're just like, dude, like you're such a Cowboys homer. Like, that's a terrible pick.
Which it was.
Yeah, which I mean, yeah, in the grand scheme.
But it wasn't week 1 though.
But yeah, so week 1, Kevin Ogletree comes out scores 3 touchdowns in the first half. And we're all sitting there watching the games with him, and he's just like, I told you, brother. And we're sitting there like, Kevin Ogletree, really? Like, this is going to be a thing. And luckily, it wasn't a thing.
It was not a thing. It was not
but
week
it
one,
was week 1. So that's like the definition of like sleepers, where you take random shots on guys.
Not in the 6th round though. Do not draft Tyrell Williams in the 6th round.
Not draft because I don't want to hear from you whenever you're like, you said Tyrell Williams was going to be a wide receiver 1. That's not what I said.
Right.
He could lead the team. I'm not saying he's a wide receiver 1 in fantasy football. I'm just saying he could be the wide receiver 1 on the Lions, and he's going undrafted. So if you're, your last couple picks, if you're just scrolling through names and he's available, good name to take a shot on.
Right. Yeah, I like it.
It could be Kevin Ogletree.
Yeah, maybe you have week 1 Kevin Ogletree. And then look, if that happens, trade his ass immediately. All right, I like it. So my wide receiver sleeper that I picked out is a guy that I just absolutely cannot quit, man. I've given up on the Mike Williams wide receiver 1 hopes. I've come to peace with the fact that is not going to happen.
It makes no sense.
But he is somebody that I cannot give up on, and his ADP allows me to just keep on keeping on with grabbing him in the later rounds and then getting my heart broken. But this year, I think it's finally going to be different. So Mike Williams, wide receiver for the Los Angeles Chargers. He's currently going in the 11th round, middle of the 11th round, 1106, as the wide receiver 50. Okay, so this is not wide receiver 1 season for Mike Williams. This is wide receiver 5 on your team season for Mike Williams. But the first thing I'm going to mention that I don't think is as big of a deal as it's being made out to be, but the news has been out there, so I'm just going to go ahead and say it. The new Chargers offensive coordinator, Joe Lombardi, former Saint assistant, says that Mike Williams will play the X receiver position that he's pretty much played his entire career anyway. But that position in the Saints offense, whenever Joe Lombardi was there, was held by Michael Thomas, which you know how he was targeted in that offense. Now, I still think Keenan Allen leads his team in targets, but with the mix of Hunter Henry being out of the picture and Joe Lombardi saying, hey, this is where he's going to be playing. And I think he even went as far as to say, and granted, no coach is going to say this wide receiver, you can pretty much expect him to suck this year. But he said, I would expect a pretty good looking stat sheet most of the year, something along those lines for Mike Williams. And with him having an established role in the offense and the new offensive coordinator looking to get him involved. And then there's always the factor of he is a unrestricted free agent after this year. So this man, he's been very inconsistent during his career. So he's looking to put together a full solid year to go get the bag this offseason. All those factors involved, I do think wide receiver 50 is criminally low for Mike Williams. He's in my mind, he's going to be the second option for a quarterback that just broke all sorts of rookie records, last year, and Justin Herbert, a guy that really caught me by surprise. I was not high on Herbert at all. He came out and did what he did, and I was shocked. But hey, I'm back in on Mike Williams now that I've seen it. Count me in. He's one of 8 players to average 10 plus yards per target over the last 2 seasons. And that's minimum of 100 targets. And one thing about Herbert that I didn't doubt, even though I didn't really like him, is he can deliver the deep ball. And Mike Williams, he makes me nervous as hell because every time he goes up to catch the ball, it just looks like he's coming down to break every bone in his body. Like he has no regard for his body whenever he comes down with the ball. He high points the ball as good as anybody, but on his way down, it's just like, oh man, he's about to kill himself. So you've got the injury risk that is there with Mike Williams, but again, he's going in the 11th round. He's the 50th receiver off the board, and he's the number 2 option for what I think is going to be a really good offense for fantasy. And so with Hunter Henry gone. Keenan Allen is the clear number one. I love Keenan Allen. And this is not me telling you Mike Williams is taking over as wide receiver one. I tried that already a few years ago. That's what I thought might happen. There's no doubt in Keenan Allen. Okay, that this man is as good as he's as good as it gets in a route runner. Like Mike Williams is not overtaking Keenan Allen, but if you can get the number 2 option for the Chargers in the 11th round, and he has double-digit touchdown upside, in my opinion, that's where I think the upside comes and where he's going to outproduce his ADP. If he outproduces his ADP, it's because he stayed healthy and he was productive in the touchdown department, which is the hardest of stats to project in terms of fantasy for me. But that's where I'm shooting my shot at with him, and just at his price point. I mean, there's never going to be a draft. If he's there in the 11th round, even the 10th round, there's never going to be a draft I'm not going to take him, and I'm not going to take my shot, because I think that you could have his ceiling, to me, when I'm saying in a sleeper and somebody that could be really productive, is if he does stay healthy, he does hit that double-digit touchdown mark. I think he could be a top 24 receiver easily, and he's going as a wide receiver 50. So that's Mike Williams is the guy for me that I'm reaching on and I'm grabbing there at in the double-digit rounds.
Gotcha. Yeah, man. You're right. He is such a drug, because I'm also one, like, since he was drafted, like, I have no idea how he has not become just like Julio.
I know.
I know he can't stay healthy. I know that's his big Achilles heel. Man, like, the guy's just such a freak at that position.
And you look at guys going in around him, like I already talked about my love for Laviska Shenault in our Plant Your Flag episode, but whenever you get below him, like I'm taking him over Cole Beasley. Antonio Brown is interesting.
Yeah, I like AB this year.
Yeah, it was between him and Mike Williams for my sleeper pick, honestly. The fact that Antonio Brown is going in the 10th round is another one that's criminally low. So that's another one where, like, if I can leave the 10th and 11th round with Antonio Brown and Mike Williams, I'm going to be ecstatic. But like, I'm taking him over Corey Davis, I'm taking him over T.Y. Hilton, and then there's not a single guy below him that I would consider passing up.
I'll tell you right now, don't draft the Colts pass catcher. It has nothing to do with Carson Wentz, but it has everything to do with Frank Reich. Like, they spread the ball around way too much.
Right. But like, even some of these guys, even higher above Shenault, who I love, like I would take him over Hollywood. I would take him over Devontae Parker. I would take him over Curtis Samuel, Jalen Waddle. There's a very
Waddle's
realistic.
Interesting to me.
It's just like if I want to take Waddle, I'm probably just drafting Will Fuller instead and shooting my shot on him, because I think Will Fuller is going to play a similar role to what Waddle will eventually develop into next year for redraft. But I think I think Waddle could possibly win you some weeks, but you're never going to know when to start Waddle. Like, you might have him on your bench and he's going to blow up for 20, and then you'll put him in your lineup the next week and he's going to give you 3 points. And I think Will Fuller will be a little bit more stable version of that. Whereas Mike Williams, I think, if he is healthy, will be more consistent. And so I mean, there's going to be a lot of drafts probably where I'm drafting Mike Williams in the 9th round, right? And he's going back here in the 11th. So yeah, it's Mike Williams season forever over here, man. I'm never going to quit him. He's going to have to just retire, I guess.
Yeah, eventually he's going to become a wide receiver 1 eventually.
And I'm taking so many victory laps. I'm never going to quit running.
All right, so now we're
getting into the tight end position.
Tight ends, all right. So my tight end sleeper on the year.
Oh, and speaking of sleepers gonna love this one.
Yeah. Me saying positive things about the Titans, you would think the world's ending, but yeah. Sometimes you can be objective. It is a thing. You don't have to hate everything. It's okay. Nobody's attacking you all the time. So my wide receiver, or not wide receiver, my tight end sleeper on the season is Anthony Ferguson. So Drew, pull up that ADP, big dog.
All right, let me go find him. Hang on. Irv Smith, Gerald Everett, Adam Troutman. We'll talk about him in a minute. Jared Cook, Zach Ertz. I even watch Zach Ertz is going on this board. Troutman, the Fercer's nowhere to be found.
Yes.
He's not here.
That's another one that you might be able to get undrafted. I am seeing right now, looking at it, Anthony Ferguson is being drafted as tight end 21.
Yeah, according to the Ultimate Draft Kit, he's going in the 19th round.
Yes. So here's why I love Anthony Ferguson this year. I think this guy has borderline tight end 1 upside at that position. I think he can be a top 10 tight end. So if we look at it last year, Ryan Tannehill targets the tight end position at the 7th highest rate in the NFL. So he's going to get the targets. On top of this, Fercer saw the 3rd most targets among all tight ends in the NFL who did not lead their team in targets at that position. So obviously Jonnu Smith was there. He led the team in targets. But outside of that, he only saw 1 fewer target per game than Jonnu Smith did, and only played 32% of the Titans snaps. So,
wow.
Yes. So if you project this, if let's say, for example, he inherits the snap rate of Jonnu Smith, which was 75%, coupled with his target rate per snap, which was 15% of all targets, that makes him the 6th most targeted tight end in the NFL. If he projects, to take Jonnu Smith at the rate that Ryan Tannehill targeted Ferguson last year, if he takes Jonnu Smith's snap rate, if you crunch the numbers, he will be the 6th most targeted tight end in the NFL. And then on top of that, whenever he did start, because I believe Jonnu Smith missed a few games last season due to injury. Whenever he did start, do you know how many fantasy points he averaged per start? 17.7 was his average every start. So this guy's going tight end 21. You're getting him almost undrafted. I think he's got a clear path to targets. It's just him and Jeff Swain in the tight end.
It's just him.
Yeah, because Jeff Swain is much more of a blocker than
right. He had traditional blocking tight end.
So
right.
With the way Tannehill targets that tight end position, yes, we know Julio Jones is going to be there. He's going to take some targets. I actually think that's a plus for Anthony Ferguson, because the Titans will want basically to prove themselves right with that trade. Derrick Henry's not getting 400 carries this year. They're going to throw the ball more because they have Julio Jones, because they have A.J. Brown. They want to make sure that trade, I mean, look, it's not dig on Titans. All management does it. The Colts did it with Trent Richardson. They traded a pick for him. He sucked ass. They continued to give him the ball.
They fed him anyway.
Yeah. They want to make themselves look good for the trades they make. That tells me right now the Titans are going to throw the ball at a higher rate this season than they did last season.
I buy that. Yeah.
What that means is Anthony Ferguson, as the main pass catching tight end, has borderline top 10 tight end potential that you can get undrafted at that position. Very, very high on him. I think he's really talented as a pass catcher, not much of a run blocker. But like I said, I think this plays into the strengths of what the Titans are going to turn into this season, as opposed to the last couple seasons. And with the way Tannehill targets that position, now we'll have to see what happens with the offense, obviously, because Arthur Smith is gone to Atlanta. Right. We'll see if they run the same type of offense. That's going to be the biggest threat to him. But I think you're looking at a borderline top 10 tight end, a tight end 1, in my opinion, this coming up season. And he's being drafted as tight end 21. And like Drew said, going in the 19th round. That is insane. So that is my
essentially undrafted.
Yeah, essentially undrafted. That is my big sleeper for this season at the tight end position.
Right. And whenever you're talking about sleepers at the tight end position, you're talking about people that have punted the position in the early parts of the draft. And for me, if you're not taking one of those top, if
you're not getting the big
5, for me,
3.
it's three is fair. I'm still willing to draft. I've talked about my love for Kyle Pitts even in redraft, and I know that's rookies rookies in redraft leagues are supposed to be off limits, but Kyle Pitts isn't a normal rookie. That's a conversation we've already had, but
we'll see.
Yeah, exactly. But whatever you talk about, Kelsey, Kittle, and Darren Waller, those are the guys you're really you're really investing high draft capital in at the tight end position in redraft leagues. And if you're not drafting one of those three guys, and then again, I'm okay with investing high draft cap, some not as high, like I'm talking about now, like those guys you're drafting and like Kelsey in the first.
You're getting them the second round. You might get Waller or Kittle. They might drop to the third.
Right. And then, then you're talking about like the other
those
two guys
drop to the third. Let me join your league.
Right. And then the guys that, like I'm okay if you want to take a 5th round shot on your guy, whether it be for me, TJ Hawkinson or Kyle Pitts. And then you've got Mark Andrews in there as well. Those are kind of the 6 guys at the tight end position that I'm okay investing early draft capital in. Although for me, this is just me personally. If I'm not grabbing one of those big 3, I'm most likely waiting unless Pitts drops a little bit. As much as I even love him in redraft leagues, I think Pitts is going to be somebody where his ADP is just going to continue to climb, and he's going to get somewhere to where even I'm uncomfortable drafting him, even him being somebody I planted my flag on. Like I feel like we're just at the very beginning of the Pitts hype. We've still got a good couple, like a month and a half, so we'll see where it ends up. To where if I would say, like whenever we do if we do a plant your flag version 2 closer to draft time, Pitts is, might be unlikely to be a repeat there. But so we're talking about guys to where if you don't draft somebody in those top, those top 3 guys, just wait. Like
that's how I've always approached not only tight end but quarterback. If I'm not hitting a Lamar, Mahomes type of guy there in the first 3 to 4 rounds, which I never do.
Right. And that's what I was going to say. That's the big difference is tight end. I'm okay investing an early pick in one of the top guys.
Look, if you take Travis Kelce in the first round, I have no argument there. I mean, that's not what I would do personally, but I'm not going to argue it.
And that's where you're going to have to grab him if you want him. And there's no issue with that.
Yeah. I mean, you might get him on the turn, if you're picking later in the second round. But yeah, I mean, my strategy has always been, if I'm not getting one of those big 3 guys there in the first 3 rounds, the tight end and the quarterback will be the 2 last positions I take to find starters on my roster.
Right. And the quarterback position specifically, why it's different from tight end for me, is there is a 0% chance I'm investing like that. I will not have Pat Mahomes on any of my redraft teams this year. I will not have Josh Allen.
Rodgers.
Yeah, Rodgers, his ADP.
I won't touch a quarterback until about the 9th to 10th round.
Yeah, round 8 or 9 is usually kind of my sweet spot where I start to look. And then even then, if like I have like a specific guy I'm targeting, and if he gets picked before me, I'm not going to just pick another quarterback. I'll just continue to wait.
For example, let's just pull this up since we're talking about it. Let's look at where Ryan Tannehill is going right now in drafts.
Okay, let's see. Matt Ryan, Tannehill, 905. Yeah, 103rd player off the board.
Yeah, that would be a guy that I would be targeting in every draft I do this season.
Right.
And he's going in the middle of the 9th round.
Yeah, like I'd rather have him than Trevor Lawrence. The Julio trade, I would have rather had Stafford before the Julio trade. The Julio trade has made things really difficult for that. But like, I'd rather have him over Burrow. I would rather have Brady. So yeah,
I'd rather have in fantasy wise. I think I would rather have Tannehill over Brady in 1 quarterback leagues.
I still think I would take Brady, but I get the argument though, especially after the Julio trade. I understand the argument without a doubt. But yeah, so
let's get back on sleeper tight end.
Yeah, but
enough about quarterback. Quarterbacks too damn much.
This is a perfect sleeper pick. But this is a guy that you can wait until you're talking about your last 2 positional picks. You can if you're waiting on tight end and quarterback, this is a tight end that you can grab. And then the option I'm going to give is another one just like this, where you can wait if you don't grab one of those top 3, top 4 guys. If you don't have a guy at the top that you love that falls to you where you want to grab them, then you can wait. And you can take advantage of Adam Troutman, who is currently going as the tight end 19. He's going in the 14th round. And for Troutman, I think the argument is pretty easy personally. There's 170 plus vacated targets due to the departure of 2 fellow tight ends. So you're talking about Jared Cook and Josh Hill. So 2 guys ahead of him on the depth chart last year are out of the picture. And then Emmanuel Sanders is gone as well. And then you factor in the stat that tight ends have averaged 8 targets per game since Sean Payton took over as head coach in New Orleans. And that's not a small sample size. Like, Sean Payton's been there for a long time. So the targets are there. He's the clear tight end 1 on that depth chart. And then on top of the fact, he was graded out as the best run blocking tight end in the league last year. So he's going to be on the field a lot. Like even if it's not an obvious passing situation, he's going to be on the field. And then whenever you're talking about a guy, what I look for in tight ends late, if I'm shooting for a guy who I think has upside, I'm looking for somebody that has the possibility of being the second most targeted pass catcher on that team. Now, granted, Alvin Kamara's on the team. He's not, he's not a wide receiver or a tight end, but he might, he has a good chance of catching more passes than Troutman. Michael Thomas is the clear one on that team. But then after Michael Thomas, like, I'm done personally on waiting for the Traquan Smith breakout. Like I'm kind of out on that. Emmanuel Sanders is gone. The 2 tight ends on the depth chart in front of him are gone. So next man up for me is Adam Troutman. So I think he has, at worst, I think he'll be the 3rd most targeted player on the team. Possibility of being the 2nd most targeted player on the team. So, he's again somebody that you can wait on, and you're possibly talking about the 2nd most targeted, 3rd most targeted player on the Saints, and you're getting him as the tight end 19 in the 14th round.
Yeah, I really like that pick as well. That is a guy that I was very high on as well before I landed on my pick, just because, like you said, he's going in the 14th. You're getting, you're getting Ferguson in the 19th or undrafted.
Right.
But yeah, I think either one of these guys, if, like you said, if you're not getting one of those big 3, you're going to want to punt that position completely. These are prime targets. More than likely, you can grab both of these guys, and
see if one of them hits.
Yeah, and then whichever one hits, you're looking good for the year. So yeah, both of these guys, big fans of. So now we will finally get on to everybody's favorite topics, quarterbacks. So my quarterback here, sleeper target. Everybody's gonna laugh at me. That's okay. I'll totally make fun of myself. My boy Danny Dimes, Daniel Jones for the New York Giants. Let's see where Daniel Jones is going here in ADP. And I believe it is relatively late. I want to say 12th round is where we have him at.
Yeah, he unlike a couple of the last guys you've picked, he is at least on here, I think. Maybe he's not. Actually, he might not have been on here either.
There he is.
There he is.
Round. And I
Cam
think
Newton
this is about
the
right.
only quarterback going later, according to this ADP.
Yeah, and I get it because he burned a lot of people last year. The year before, he averaged 20 fantasy points per game. This last season, had a very bad year. The turnovers got him, averaged 15 points per game. But you're talking about a guy, top 10 in weekly quarterback points using his legs. We know he can run. Everybody's seen the viral clip of the 80-yard, run that he didn't score. He tripped over his own feet, which kind of describes Daniel Jones' career so far. But that team is just loaded with offensive talent. If he doesn't hit this year, then they're probably going to move on from him because he has every opportunity in the world. You got to have guys. They brought in Kenny Galladay. Saquon Barkley is back. Evan Ingram is still there. We'll see what happens with him. And then, the other options there on offense, the other wide receivers, they drafted Kadarius Toney. I believe they they still have quite a few guys there. So, Slayton's still there. It's just there's so many offensive weapons on that roster that he has at his disposal, along with having the rushing upside, that I think to me, he's a quarterback too, firmly entrenched as a quarterback too, but can give you some quarterback 1 weeks, if you're having to stream or if there's injury issues, if, your starter goes down and he's sitting there on waiver wires, or you just have him as your backup. I think he could be a solid waiver wire slash, option slash, bye week slash injury option for you. And like I said, if he doesn't hit this year with all the weapons they have there, like I said, Saquon's back. You have Slayton there. They brought in Kenny Galladay. Ingram's still there. Did I mention
Shepherd.
Saquon's back?
Right.
So I mean, yeah, it's set up on a silver platter for him to put up really good numbers this season in that offense. And we'll see what happens. If it doesn't hit again this year, then they would more than likely look to move on. But I'm willing to take a shot on him late as my quarterback 2 option on my team, or I think he could be a very solid streaming type guy if you stream quarterbacks, if that's kind of your thing. I think he could be a very solid guy this year for that, especially playing in the NFC least.
Right. I mean, that's what you're talking about in this range too, is guys that at this point, you're drafting a guy with the mindset that you're going to stream the position, and you grab a guy who you hope, might have some top 12 quarterback upside. And if that doesn't hit, then you were already planning on streaming anyway. So, no harm, no foul. And I'm not sure what something to me personally that I like to look at whenever I'm grabbing a quarterback late is looking at and this is something that's hard to project because there's so much turnover year after year. I don't like looking at just purely strength of schedule, because like that's just, to me, teams are so different every year. But like, looking at their first few weeks of the season and seeing if they might be able to get off to a hot start and go off that momentum, I think is helpful too. And I haven't looked at the Giants schedule. I have no idea what that looks like. But
no, they do have a relatively tough schedule. The only teams though that I would really be worried about them in their division would be Washington. I think the Cowboys defense is still really bad. I think the Eagles defense, well, I don't think it's bad. I don't think it's good. So I mean, you're guaranteed at least 4 good matchups that you could possibly stream him in. And then that's without looking at some of the other teams that he'll be playing as well.
Right. Yeah. So whenever you're shooting, like whenever I'm 100% pro weight on quarterback. It's in a 1 quarterback league. Obviously, Superflex is a completely different discussion, but in a 1 quarterback league, yeah, no, I have no issue with taking a flyer on Daniel Jones. This is a guy that he was a lot of people's pick last year for this type of thing, and he burned a lot of people, and so I think he's going to be a guy that people are going to remember how that felt, and he's going to go undrafted in most cases, and you'll be able to get him with the very last pick in the draft, similar to what you were talking about with your tight end pick last time. So it's, again, it's a hard pick to hate because you don't have to invest anything in making it happen.
Yeah, I think the only guy that I've picked that you actually have to invest anything in is Zack Moss. I think everybody else is pretty much free bait. So
yeah, that's exactly right. All right, so my last sleeper pick and my quarterback sleeper pick, and I went back and forth on a couple of different guys, and I felt like I shouldn't pick this guy. He was my first choice, and I bounced around on some other guys, and I finally just said, screw it. I'm taking this guy because I do think it could end up paying the biggest dividends of the guys that he's going around, and that is Justin Fields, quarterback, Chicago Bears. Now, the one thing I don't like about this pick that I normally don't do, but I think it could be worth doing, is if you're going to do this, you're going to have to draft 2 quarterbacks in a 1 quarterback league. And that's something that I'm usually against, because all indications are that Andy Dalton is going to be the starter, and he is locked in at least as the week 1 starter. That was as far as they would say, but they, even after drafting Justin Fields, and it was the beginning of June, the report came out that Andy Dalton is our week 1 starter, and they were very specific in saying week 1 starter.
It's like Matt Flynn was our week 1 starter when we drafted Russell Wilson.
Yeah, and so that's kind of a caveat with this pick is, if prior to your draft, word comes out that Justin Fields is the starter, this probably isn't going to be a sleeper pick anymore, because his ADP will skyrocket if he is announced as the starter prior to week 1. But if the Bears stick to their guns, and with Matt Nagy, I would not surprise me a bit if he stuck to his guns and rolled with Andy Dalton.
He would love to lose his job this year.
Right. I think it is worth it to invest in 2 late quarterbacks and make one of them being Justin Fields. And this is why. So for me, he's the quarterback 24 off the board. So, it's, again, you're talking about, like, you can use your last 2 positional picks on somebody like Daniel Jones and then Justin Fields, or Ryan Fitzpatrick, or somebody like that they can provide you fantasy value. Carson Wentz, sure. All right, so I mentioned the whole week 1 deal. Week 1, on the Chicago Bears play the Los Angeles Rams in prime time. Now, I'm a Rams fan, so I'm looking at this with Rams glasses on, but I do not feel like that's going to go well for Andy Dalton going up against the Rams defense in prime time. Just my personal opinion.
400 yards and 5 touchdowns.
Yeah. The internet will blow up, and I will go into hiding.
You better log off sleeper.
Yeah. But I do not expect that to go very well. And I believe that Matt Nagy is coaching for his job this year. And I do not think Andy Dalton is going to have a very long leash. I would go as far as to say I would not be surprised if going into week 2, Justin Fields is the starter. And if you look at their schedule from week 2 to week 5, they've got the Cincinnati Bengals, the Cleveland Browns, which is a tough defense. Cleveland's not going, that's not an easy game, but they get versus Cincinnati, at Cleveland, and then versus Detroit, and then at Las Vegas. So from week 2 to week 5, there's one game that somewhat concerns me, being Cleveland. The other 3 are, with what I'm projecting those defenses to be, is not concerning at all. So again, the only thing that I don't like about this is you're going to have to roster 2 quarterbacks if you're drafting tomorrow, because right now Andy Dalton is the starter. If that changes, again, all bets are off. This isn't really a sleeper pick anymore because his ADP is going to climb beyond sleeper pick. But if you invest that pick in him and he does get that job early in the year, with his mix of the talent around him, with Allen Robinson, Darnell Mooney, the young tight end Cole Kmet, even Jimmy Graham is still there. Jimmy Grandpa, for whatever reason, he's still there. But the pass catchers around him, and then you factor in his rushing upside and what that can bring to the quarterback position in fantasy. If he does take over, what my guess would be week 2, or even maybe week 3, say Cincy goes okay, and then they get squashed by Cleveland, and then they make the switch in week 4 against Detroit, and his first 2 games coming out of Detroit and the Raiders. The schedule does get a little bit more difficult after that. You get into some divisional games with Green Bay, and things like that. It does get a little bit tougher.
Can I plant my flag real quick?
Yeah.
Okay, plant my flag. If you are streaming quarterbacks, week 2, Andy Dalton against the Bengals, revenge game. It never fails. You have to plant your flag on revenge games, because that will be the one game a year that Andy Dalton just goes absolutely bananas.
As long as it's not a primetime game.
Yeah.
Because Andy Dalton in prime time, and that's been a long going joke on the internet, but it's produced results. Andy Dalton gets shit on in prime time, and that week 1 game against the Rams is, I believe it's either Sunday night or Monday Night Football, like prime time football game. I don't think it's going to go well, and I don't think that Bears fans are going to be very quiet about it.
Annihilate.
So I think you're going to see a very early change of the guard at the quarterback position for the Bears. And I love the pass catching talent that the Bears do have. Allen Robinson is one of the best receivers in the league. Darnell Mooney is a very underrated receiver and a very
Great sleeper target as well, Darnell
yeah,
Mooney.
yeah. He's another one for me that, like, Justin Fields is he's a guy that in college, at least, he was great at delivering the deep ball. And Darnell Mooney, I mean, if you go back and watch Bears film from last year, you will lose count at how many times he was open deep and just got missed like just terribly. And where I think Justin Fields would deliver great passes there. And then Cole Kmet is an up and coming tight end. They've got Jimmy Graham there still as well, which I'm not really, that really doesn't factor into this decision very much for me at all. But his rushing upside mixed with the players around him and the fact that I think he takes that job early, I think he has the type of like top 5 fantasy quarterback upside, assuming he gets that job. And that's what I'm looking for whenever I'm grabbing a quarterback late is I've got the mindset that I'm planning on streaming the position, but I'm grabbing a guy where I'm hoping I don't have to. And that's what I think Justin Fields represents at the end of drafts with with the fact that his ADP is so low because Dalton is such a concrete starter right now, according to Bears camp. Now we'll see. We've got about a month and a half before, a month and a half before draft season really starts to heat up for redraft players. We'll see if that changes between now and then. But right now, I think Justin Fields is the best value at the quarterback position with how late he's going and the upside that he comes with.
Yeah, I'm a huge Fields fan. Really excited to see what that kid's got. Obviously, I was very high on him in the draft process as well. If you go back and listen to some of our draft shows we did, we get really in depth with some of these rookies that we're talking about, especially guys like Justin Fields. So you go check out those podcasts. But that will wrap up our sleeper show today. That is all 4 of our sleepers at all 4 of those positions. And if you do draft some of these guys, let us know in the comments. Let us know, like, hey, I took your guys' advice. I grabbed Troutman or I grabbed Fercer, as a free agent, after the draft ended, or, I got Zack Moss in the 9th round. Like, just, let us know if you guys take our advice and you grab some of these guys,
or even if there's a sleeper that we didn't hit on that you guys are high on, let us know some guys you overlooked or let's go guys we overlooked.
Because we have multiple guys that we wanted to include in this, that just some of these other guys just presented a better sleeper chat value and just overall value for us. But there's plenty of sleepers that we really did like. I've got a few that I can just name off the top of my head that I'm really high on this year.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, it's let us know in the comments, and we definitely appreciate, especially the last 2 to 3 weeks that we've been doing these fantasy series, with the plant your flag and the busts. Now we're doing this. We've got some really great reviews, and it's really helped the channel out a lot. So we appreciate all the support. I'm going to let Andrew do his closing that he normally does.
Yeah, as always, man. I mean, we've been trying to keep these a little bit closer to the hour time slot we had planned on. So it hasn't been as difficult to make it to the end as it was, in the beginning. But if you've made it this far, first of all, thank you for listening this deep into the podcast. We're pretty much anywhere you can find a podcast, Apple, Spotify, Google, whatever. If we're there. And then of course, if you want to, if you want to watch us talk about this stuff, we're on YouTube as well. We've got these, fancy little backgrounds brought to you by Google, and our ugly mugs talking about all this stuff that we're going over and sliding through the ADPs and things like that. So you've got the visuals over on YouTube as well. If you do venture over to YouTube, make sure that you subscribe to the channel. It's completely free. Doesn't cost you a thing. Whenever you subscribe, click the little bell that pops up. That's going to notify you anytime a new show drops. We're dropping shows like once a week, so you're not going to get flooded with notifications, but you will know whenever a new show does drop, so you can get the upper hand on the people that aren't listening to this show. For these guys, for us that are experts of absolutely nothing, you also can be an expert of absolutely nothing by, by listening. So, and then, like we already said, while you're there, make sure to drop in the comments. YouTube is the easiest way for us to interact with people. So make sure you drop in the comments, let us know where you agree or disagree with us, and let us know, who your sleepers are for this year at this early point in the process. This is something we kind of put a bow on the early portion where we've been doing these in June, July. Obviously things are going to be heating up here over the next month and a half. Maybe we revisit this and see where ADPs have climbed and dropped and things like that. But let us know where you agree, disagree, things like that. And then, of course, if you've made it this far, hopefully you've liked what you've heard. So be sure and like the video as well. That goes a long way in helping us with the YouTube algorithm too. So all that stuff, the subscribes, the likes, the comments, all of that goes a long way in helping us. So again, thank you, and thank you.
Yeah, for sure. So that will conclude this week's podcast. We will be back next week with some other great fantasy stuff as well. We're just really diving into fantasy football. We're really excited for it, if you couldn't tell.
No such thing as an off season.
Oh yeah, never. So yeah, we will definitely be back next week. Like he said, make sure to like and subscribe on YouTube, and then follow us on any of your podcast platforms. We will be on there, and we will see you guys next week. Thank you so much.